Movement is the principle of art in which the artist directs the viewer's eye through the artwork. The artist arranges the elements of art in such a way that leads the viewer through the artwork in the exact way that the artist wants him or her to. Movement is often used to direct the viewer's eye to the focal areas, or areas of emphasis in the artwork. There are two kinds of movement that we deal with in art. One is called recorded action movement. This is the movement that is actually happening in the artwork, like the horses galloping or the girl jumping in the water. This movement is part of the artwork's content or story. The objects look like they are actually in motion. The second kind of movement in art is called compositional movement. This kind of movement deals with how the viewer's eye moves or travels through the artwork. The artist arranges the elements to control how the viewer reads the artwork, meaning what will the viewer look at first, second, third, and so on, and what will the viewer end up focusing on in the artwork's composition. In the example here, you can see on the right how the eye is being led into the picture using the 3 rocks and the 2 triangle shapes on the right side. The darker hole in the cloud serves to bring our eyes back to the composition instead of traveling off the top of it. Here is an example of compositional movement. How does your eye travel through this artwork? Our eye is drawn first to the woman due to the stair railing pointing to her, as well as the contrast of the white apron and her dark clothing. Then our eye travels up the stairs, drawn up there by the large dark area and the lady gazing in that same direction. Because there's nothing to see at the top of the stairs, our eyes go back down to the woman as the primary focal point in the composition. Here is another example of compositional movement, but this is a sculpture. 3D artwork has compositional movement along with 2D artwork like paintings and drawings. How does your eye travel through this sculpture? Yes, it starts at the base where it's visually the heaviest, and then travels up in the same swirl-like line as the sculpture. The end of the swirl points our eye back into the sculpture. Our eye then slides down the sculpture to the base. Then our eye goes back to traveling over the sculpture along the path that it just did. Would you consider this artwork to have compositional movement or recorded movement? It has both compositional and recorded movement. There are several objects in the composition, like the man about to strike the figures sitting on the steps, that are in motion as part of the content or story in the artwork. This is what we call the recorded movement. On the right side, the artwork's compositional movement is shown with red arrows. We can see how the artist wanted our eye to travel through the artwork's composition. How about this artwork? Do you see compositional movement or recorded movement? This artwork has only compositional movement. There is nothing in the picture that looks like it's in motion. However, there are many objects that are working to draw our eye to the buildings in the background. Most notably, the many rows of crops in the foreground and midground of the work, along with the contrast in color between the green of the fields and trees and the reddish color of the buildings. Do you think this artwork has compositional movement or recorded movement? You're right, it has both kinds of movement. The guys running on the track represent the recorded movement. The compositional movement, or the direction that our eye travels, is determined mostly by the curve of the track and the figures being larger in the front than those in the back. The thin white finishing tape is also part of the compositional movement, and then it makes our eyes stop at that point of the composition and not fall off the bottom right in the same direction that the figures are running. Does this artwork show compositional or recorded movement? It shows only compositional movement. The artist creates a path of apples for our eyes to follow along, starting at the bottom and curving up like a backward S up to the top. The edge of the table near the top serves to stop our eyes from traveling off the composition.